afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project and broadcast on the TLBTV network. And today I'm really excited to have a guest that we've talked on the phone a lot, we email a lot, but this is the first time we've had a chance to actually do a show together. And that's Josh Bernstein. And Josh, I'm coming to you from Cocoa, Florida, and I know that you're a little bit of a time difference from me, but really glad to have you on the show. Welcome to the American Vision.
It's great to be on the program with you.
Yeah, and Josh, you've got a lot of things going on. You do a show every day, and we all try and watch it every time. And you have some great guests. And you're also involved in other things. You're a national spokesman, for example, for AMAC, which is, I think, a great organization. I really like them, as opposed to the other guys that I don't like at all.
Yeah, AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, fabulous, incredible organization. They are a seniors-based organization for folks 50 years of age and older. They're very similar to AARP. They have the same types of products and services. One of the main differences, though, is that when they do lobby on behalf of Washington and Congress and, of course, their members, they try to provide the members that they represent and seniors in general with more power, more control, and, of course, more freedom in their healthcare choices and decisions. So folks can go to amac.us, amac.us. They're located right there, headquartered right there in sunny Florida. And you can also call them at 888-262-2006. Again, 888-262-2006. Hopefully you can put that phone number and the offer that I'm about to offer in the video here in the article later on. But if you contact them and tell them that you heard about AMAC on the American Vision TV program with Bill Muckler, they'll even give you a free membership, absolutely free membership. Just mention the American Vision, Bill Muckler, and they'll give you a free membership. Again, that number is 888-262-2006, or find them on the web at amac.us.
Wow, that's a fantastic offer because really great organization. I first heard about them probably back somewhere around 2005 or 6 or something like that. And I got some friends of mine who were just fed up with AARP, and we all changed over. And so that's a tremendous offer.
Yeah, AMAC's an incredible organization. It's run and owned and operated by an absolutely dear, sweet person. His name is Dan Weber. Great person. Very close friend of mine. Just a really, really nice person who would just give you the shirt off his back to help anyone, regardless of political, stripes or anything like that. We're a conservative organization. We put America first, but honestly, we're there to help all Americans, and we want to see the entire country succeed. And that's really the true core value of AMAC. And again, that is represented in our founder. He's a fantastic person. An amazing human being, truly, and I'm just so honored to even just be associated with the group in any capacity. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of people and contributors and so forth, on your daily show, I have the opportunity that you show my book on there and help America see straight.
2020 Vision for America, folks, absolutely. Buy that book. You'll see the ads on the Josh Bernstein show on the bottom. Sometimes you'll even get them in a snippet of a screenshot. But, Bill's a good guy. He's a patriot. He's true to his word. It's a fantastic book, folks. You should definitely buy it. 2020 Vision for America. We've got to get America to see straight again.
Oh, thank you so much. Hey, let's go back in time a little bit. I remember when I first got to know who you were was probably back in 2015, and you were doing a radio podcast, and then you started the TV thing. And I remember you asking some of us to give you some, give you some feedback, I guess is what I want to say, is how the audio and video quality is coming and so forth. But tell us, how did you actually get into doing this whole radio podcast thing and everything? I mean, you've been a successful person and before that.
Mhm. Well, I think a lot of it had to do, honestly, with 9/11. To be quite honest, growing up as a kid, I was never really involved with politics. I didn't really care about the issues, to be quite honest. And then 9/11 happened, and after 9/11, especially because I grew up on the East Coast, I wanted to know the what, the where, the who, the how, and the why. And through my research, I found talk radio, started to listen to talk radio. And I think that once you really start to pay attention to the issues, you end up getting the equivalent of a political science degree in about 6 to 8 months. And so as I learned more and more and more, that's when the kind of the bug hit me, so to speak. And from there, I started to write. And I've always been a prolific writer. I wrote a lot of poetry, to be quite honest, when I was a kid. I've been, published numerous times, things like that. Won New York Times Poet of the Year in 1991. So I've won a lot of writing awards. But I turned that passion for poetry into a passion for politics. And it's not necessarily that I love politics, because that's not necessarily the case. I love political warfare. I love to outsmart, outfox, outthink the other side. I like to use intellect to, destroy their arguments. And so that passion to want to do that and expose injustices and preserve freedom. I always say that I'm not a conservative. I'm a preservative. I want to preserve everything that's good about the foundation of this nation, our freedom, our liberties, our prosperities. And so what happened is I started to write, and I wrote for the Examiner. And then I got lucky and I got published by Brietbart. And then I wrote for the Tea Party Tribune and my good buddy Tim Saletti. And then, I wrote for right-wing news and my buddy over there, whose name escapes me, but I'll remember it in a minute. And so I started to write for a bunch of these different publications. John Hawkins is his name. And I started to write for these little publications. And eventually, a fan, for all intents and purposes, contacted me in Alabama and said, "Hey, I really like the way that you write. Have you ever done radio?" And I said, "No, I've never done it, but I'd love to try it." And she said, "Well, I have a radio show in Alabama, and my co-host doesn't want to do the show anymore, so I'm looking for another person. I'm looking for a partner. Would you be interested?" I said, "Yeah, of course. That would be amazing." So we did a blog talk radio show. It was known as the Grit and Grace Show. I did it with a gal named Jennifer Meadows. She was more experienced in radio. She also, I think, was also on local radio there in Alabama. So long story short, we did a show together for about 10 months. And after 10 months, I realized that nobody knew who Josh Bernstein and Jennifer Meadows were. All they knew was Grit and Grace. And so I figured to myself, well, I want to take this to the next level. I wasn't 100% sure if she wanted to. She was a nice gal. We got along when we did the show, but we had creative differences. And so I wanted to take it to the next level. I got bit by the broadcasting bug. There wasn't a mic I never liked, and so I really wanted to kind of take it to the next level. So I decided to go out on my own and do my own show, and I decided at that point, too, to label it my name. Nothing cutesy, nothing fancy, just the Josh Bernstein Show. And once I did that, then, the rest is history. I started doing very well. I started gaining an extremely large audience. And then I left what I call the sandbox, which is BTR, Blog Talk Radio, because it's a good place to begin, but it's certainly not a place to stay. The sound quality is not very good, and things like that. And then I went to Ustream, and I did my show on Ustream for about 6 to 8 months. And from there, I actually kind of got lucky because the general manager of a local studio where I live heard my show because I posted everywhere. I'm a big self-promoter, and you have to be, because no one's going to promote you as much as you can promote yourself. Okay, you can hire whoever it is in the world. No one's going to promote you like you promote yourself. So I was promoting myself all over Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere. I didn't care where it went. And he contacted me, and he said, "I've listened to your show. You have a lot of raw talent. Would you be interested in doing your show in a studio?" I said, "Yeah, of course. I would love to do something like that." So he goes, "Okay, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to have the morning mayor get back to you. And I'm like, Dave Pratt? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, you know him? He goes, yeah, I'm the general manager of Star Worldwide Production Studios. And Dave Pratt is a good close friend of mine. Do you mind if I get your show in front of Dave? And I was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, obviously. He's a radio legend. He's in the Broadcasting Hall of Fame. So long story short, about an hour later, I get a phone call. Hey, Josh, this is Dave Pratt, the morning mayor. I love your show. Da-da-da-da-da. Come on in. Check out our studios. And so I did. I went down and I checked out the studios. And obviously, it's like a kid being for the first time in Toys R Us. You've got all the bells and whistles. You've got, people and producers and all these wonderful, amazing things. And so I started to do the show in the studio. And I did that for about almost, I would say, 2 years. And then at one point, I wanted to kind of branch out a little bit. And I ended up taking the show and putting it on a 50,000 watt AM station where I live. And I did that for about 4 or 5 months. I did well. I was actually sandwiched between Herman Cain, then me, and then Michael Savage. But it was only on Mondays. And the person that owned the station, he was a nice guy. He was good, but he wouldn't give me the information I needed in order to facilitate advertisers and sponsors. He wouldn't give me my numbers, so to speak, my my viewership,
analytics and all that. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I decided at that point to go back to the studio. But here's the thing. I contacted them, and they were in the process of putting together a test pilot program, because Dave Pratt is a visionary thinker of all things, and he sees things before they happen. And he sees that video is going to be the next big thing. So he asked me if I wanted to be the guinea pig. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. So we contacted my sponsors, got it all together. And then I started doing the Josh Bernstein show live in the studio with, all the production and editing and, and sound effects and the video clips and everything else. And that's kind of, where I was at that point. And through that process, ended up having the ability to meet the folks over at AMAC and started working with them. And then from there, it just kind of grew and it escalated into different things, and became a public figure, became a professional speaker, started doing speaking engagements, things like that. And I've done over 2,000 radio interviews and at least 50 TV interviews. I never turned down a radio interview for the most part. And I became the spokesman, and I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. And I'm not one of those people that likes a script. So I like to be booked on a show and not have any clue what they're going to ask me or talk about. And the reason is because I don't like those people that say, well, I'll do your show, but we only can talk about this. Or I'm not an expert on that, but I know about this. I say, if you can't talk about just about anything when it comes to politics, you don't deserve to be on the air. So for me, I actually encourage the people that book me, because they ask me, what do you want to talk about? And I just say, hit me with whatever you got and I'll answer. And for me, I like to shoot from the cuff. That's a lot better. When I do the show, I do put notes together. But one thing that you'll notice when I do my show is it's one take, folks. That's it. There's no edits. And you can tell that it's one take because you don't see all those jump cuts that you normally see on YouTube videos. I do mine in one take. Now, I do have some notes with me, and I look down occasionally, but for the most part, it's already in here. I know what I'm going to say. And so some people can't do that. Some people can. It just depends. That's the way that I prefer to do it because it's more genuine and it's more real. And as long as you're more genuine and real to your audience, they're going to respect you more. And the name of the game in what we do in broadcasting is one word: consistency. You can go back to one of my shows from 4 or 5 years ago. Granted, the subject matter may be different, but the position that I take will never change. And as long as you are true to yourself, true to your belief system, you'll be successful, because people will understand that I can go to Josh and I know I'm going to get the truth. He's never going to change or waver in his belief system depending on his audience. And I think that that's a powerful thing.
That is, and that's something I wondered, and I never had to ask you. But I didn't know if someone wrote your show or if it was scripted. But you're just talking from the heart, and that's the way it comes across anyway. So I always thought, Well, Josh knows what he's talking about, and you get on there and you have, you have a topic that you're going to talk about that day, and you cover it well. And I think you really do a lot of good research because
I do.
Really
you have to.
The in depth of it.
You have to. And what I pride myself in is I like to cover stories that the rest of the media is not covering, which is why my tagline is the Josh Bernstein Show starts where the rest of the media ends. Because the media is not going to cover some of the things that I cover. I have a lot of sources, a ton of sources inside Washington, a ton of sources inside the Trump campaign, but also a ton of sources all around the country. And I get lots of interesting stories. When I get an interesting story, I basically take it and I put it in a folder and I say, well, that might be a good one. And then on Mondays, when I get ready to do the show on Tuesday, I go through that folder and I pick through. And then I grab a couple of them and I go, okay, we're going to cover this one because nobody's covering it. We're going to cover this one because nobody's covering it. We're going to cover this one because nobody's covering it. I try to cover things that others aren't covering so that I can stand out, so that people go, geez, Josh, I never even knew about that. Where did that come from? No one's heard of Project Pelican. Have you ever heard of Project Pelican?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Project Pelican makes Uranium-1 look like a speeding ticket, okay? It's one of the worst scandals in American history, honestly. And nobody even knows about it. And it happened right in your backyard at Cape Canaveral, Florida. Basically, I'll kind of explain it a little bit. Back in 2014, Barack Obama allowed a 35-year lease on the Cape Canaveral ports to a company called Crescent Enterprises. Crescent Enterprises is teamed up with another company called Gulf Tainer. Gulf Tainer being the first company, Crescent Enterprises being the financial backing or the backup affiliate company. Okay, Gulf Tainer is owned by two Islamic brothers, the Jafar brothers. One of the brothers, Dr. Dia Jafar, was none other than the head nuclear physicist for Saddam Hussein's weapons program. So think about it. Barack Obama allowed the ports, a strategic defense area near Cape Canaveral and our space station and all that. He allowed the ports to be given to a company owned by a nuclear physicist from Saddam Hussein's regime for 35 years. And here's the worst part. It didn't even go through a CFIUS review. A CFIUS review is a national security threat assessment by the 16 intelligence agencies. He allowed this deal to go through without a review on a national security threat assessment. Now, nobody knows that. Nobody's even heard of that. It's called Project Pelican. And they're also tied in to Uranium-1 because the same company, Crescent Enterprises, works with Rosatom, which is the Uranium-1 company. But where are you going to hear that? Are you going to hear that on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or ABC or CBS or NBC? No, you're not. You're only going to hear that in alternative media sources. So it's stories like that that I like to cover because obviously a lot of people learn what's going on. But more than anything else, it sets me apart from the rest of the people in the media, and it allows me to live up to the moniker of my tagline.
Yeah, that's fantastic because I've never heard of that before either. And I'm pretty much up to date on what's happening at the port because it's really grown and a lot of the container ships, large container ships coming in. And I attend some of the local meetings, Chamber of Commerce and things like that. And I've listened to some of the military people, the generals, Air Force general that's over there. So,
look it up.
This is really new to me.
Pelican.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about interviews, and you interview some fantastic guests. And I'm just going to name a few because we can go back to about a year ago. You interviewed Milo Yiannopoulos, and then you've also in that time you've done an interview with Pam Geller. Dr. Ileana Johnson-Paw, just recently, Janine Pirro, and great interviews. But one that I just think was fantastic was a couple of years ago before anybody knew anything about these two ladies, and really we didn't know anything about Trump running either. You interviewed Diamond and Silk.
I did. I interviewed those two gals, I believe in 2015 or 16.
Early in 16 when Trump first announced his candidacy.
Yes, they were fantastic. They're just as fantastic now as they were then. They were just as smart and as quick-witted as they are now as they were then. And I think one of the questions is I asked them is I said, so what's with this shtick? What's with one talking and the other one just going, all right, yeah, uh-huh. And they said, look, we're sisters. And the dominant one said, I'm mouthy, is what she said. I'm mouthy. I like to talk a lot. And the other one said, and I'm her sister and I've got her back. And I just thought it was a really interesting dynamic. And I said to them at some point, I said, ladies, you got to learn to come out of your shell at some point, kind of joking around because they were so animated and they were such amazing guests. And quite frankly, you really can see through that interview that they have a genuine love, not only of the president, but they have a genuine love for this country. And they're just two fantastic, patriotic women. I wish them nothing but the best. And I would love to have them back on the program, kind of as a reunion. They're a lot harder to reach now than they were back then. But kudos to the two of them. Watching them in front of Congress, being grilled by the leftists in Congress was just unbelievable, just to see that, how far that they have come as well. So they were just fantastic. I've had a lot of interesting interviews. I've interviewed Montel Williams, the TV star Montel Williams. Politically,
he has MS, I believe, and you talked about MS on that one.
I did. As a matter of fact, politically we may not agree 100%, but I interviewed him to talk about Andrew Tamaresi. And if you remember, Andrew Tamaresi was the Marine that got disoriented and ended up in prison in Mexico, and they held him for a very long time. Long story short, whatever you think about Montel Williams, he was a former Marine. He was a former military man, and he did a lot behind the scenes to get that kid released. A lot.
Get him back.
A lot. And even Bill Richardson, who I absolutely disagree with everything with, former governor of New Mexico. Again, he also was holed up in that same San Diego hotel room, working with the Mexican consulate to get that kid released. So it was a fantastic story. I actually met him in person because I was invited to I was invited to go to the event, which was known as Power of Pain Foundation here locally in a town where I'm at. And one of the ladies that unfortunately suffers from chronic pain, her name is Barbie Engel. Very, very, very sweet woman. Absolutely just an amazing human being. She invited me to go, and it turns out that Montel Williams was the headliner. So I got a chance to meet him as a member of the press. And after that, I talked to him and I said, hey, I would love to interview you on the program. And he was like, sure, no problem. So I did. And we talked about Andrew's plight and being locked up and everything else. But then I switched it over to his multiple sclerosis. And we spent a good 20, 25 minutes talking about that. And at the end of the interview, he said, Josh, I have not talked about my MS with anyone in the media for about 12 to 15 years, but you made it feel so comfortable that I just want to say that I appreciate you allowing me to speak on your show about it. And, that kind of floored me. Here's Montel Williams telling me that, it was an amazing opportunity for him to talk about what's ailing him on my show. So I thought that was a really, really nice compliment and things like that. And folks, you can go and you could put the two words, Josh Bernstein and Montel Williams, in YouTube search, and you'll find that video. It's about a 28, 29-minute video, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it as much as I enjoyed doing the interview.
Yeah, and you really have a talent for making people feel good and bringing out their story and everything. And it comes across even in your monologues that you do on your shows that you're really relating to people well. And I'm just really happy to have you on here because I'm hearing you tell something I've never heard before. And I bet a lot of the people that watch your shows haven't heard you talk about some of these things either. Kind of going a little bit in depth into you and how you think and what your purpose is.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've had amazing interviews with lots of interesting people. I've done well over 500-600 interviews with all people from all different, walks of life.
Mhm.
I've even enjoyed my time, interviewing liberals. I interviewed P.J. Crowley, who was the Assistant Secretary of State under Hillary Clinton, and we had a spirited but respectful debate in which he tried to prop up Hillary Clinton, and I said, with all due respect, sir, I believe that you worked for the most corrupt politician in U.S. history, and her foundation is the largest money laundering operation in U.S. history. And he's like, well, I don't agree with that. And I said, really? Would you like me to explain step by step exactly how they do it? And he didn't like hearing that either. So, again, I've gone, tit for tat with many liberals. I try to do it in a respectful way because, they have a right to say what they want to say. I have a right to say what I'm going to say. And I'm going to defeat them with intellect and facts. It's just that simple because I have the facts on my side. I don't need to use talking points and things like that. One of the most interesting interviews I've ever had was also from that same organization, Power of Pain. There was a gentleman by the name of Derek Amato. And if anyone wants to look him up, it was quite incredible interview. Basically, this is a guy who never played an instrument, didn't know how to play the piano, didn't know how to sing, didn't know how to do anything. And he was at a barbecue at a friend's house, I think in Colorado or something like that. And they were drinking beers, they were hanging out. And from drinking beers and hanging out, they were swimming in the pool. Well, it turned into drinking beers, hanging out, throwing a football around to, hey, who can throw the football into the pool and dive into the pool and catch the ball before, they hit the ground. Mm-hmm. So they're playing this game, and he dives into the pool to catch the football, and somehow he hits his head on the bottom of the pool. And when he comes out, he's not bleeding or anything like that. He's dizzy, he's disoriented. He sits down for a few minutes. He says, I think I'm okay. I think I'm all right. And then all of a sudden, boom, he falls and he passes out. So they call the ambulance. They bring the ambulance in. They rush him to the hospital. He ends up staying, I think, 4 or 5 days in the hospital. They check his brain. He doesn't have any bleeding, no contusions, no hemorrhaging, anything like that. So they just chalk it up to a really bad concussion. Well, it turns out he gets out of the hospital. He goes back to his buddy's house. He's hanging out with his buddy. And all of a sudden, there's like a keyboard in the corner. And something's drawing him to this keyboard. He doesn't know what it is, but something is drawing him to this keyboard. So finally, after about an hour or two, he says to his buddy, hey, do you mind if I play that keyboard? And the guy's like, yeah, that's fine. Do you know how to play? He goes, I don't know, but can I play it? So he goes, yeah, sure. So he sits down at the keyboard, and he literally can play. Mozart, Beethoven, absolutely genius level. And it happened from getting hit in the head. So he was like a medical phenomenon, truly. He was I think he was the only musical savant in recorded history. His name is Derek Amato. Absolutely incredible interview, a very long interview, 58, 59 minutes long. Halfway through the interview, he brings on a gal. Her name is Mandy Harvey, I think was her name. And she turns out to be deaf. So I've got one guy who's a genius on the piano, and he plays a little bit of music, and you learn more about him. And he was on Matt Lauer's show back in the day. He was, one of the most 10 incredible human beings videos. I mean, he was a phenomenon. And he's like a tattooed guy. Like, he doesn't look like a nerdy guy. He's like a musician-looking guy, too. Mm-hmm. And so he brings on this gal, Mandy. And Mandy's story was that she had bad ear infections and things like that as a child. She ended up losing her hearing from, I think, the age of like 8 to 12 or something like that. Then she got her hearing back for about 4 or 5 years. And then at 18, she lost her hearing again. And she is one of the most incredible, operatic, beautiful singers. She takes her shoes off when she's in the studio or when she's performing so that she can feel the vibration of the music so she knows how to stay in tune. And I've got the two of these musical geniuses on the show, and they're making this beautiful music, and I'm recording it, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, this is such a cool interview. I put away my political hat. I put away, anything to talk about politics, and I just concentrated on, being like whatever, like Larry King or whatever, and just doing an interview on something of the human spirit, something completely different. And so there's those types of interviews that I've done. I've interviewed one of the singers for the Temptations. Glenn Leonard was one of the singers for the Temptations for about 10 years. You know, he was singing My Girl and, you know, and some of the others. So I've interviewed legendary football coach Howard Schnellenberger, who, you know, was a disciple of Bear Bryant. So, you know, I've really done a lot of different things. Cindy Williams, that was a phenomenal interview. The first time she gave me about 7 minutes. Then afterwards, she was so excited with the way the interview went, she gave me 30 minutes a couple of months later. And we talked about the inner workings of Squiggy and Lenny and her character and why she left the show and you know, the behind the scenes and all these different amazing questions that I learned. And I'll give one for the audience right now. If you remember the show.
Oh, yeah, Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah, you remember the, what was it, Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated, Shmuel Shamazel, Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated. So I asked her, I said, look, Cindy, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. Where on earth did this whole thing with the hopscotching in the beginning of the show and the Shmuel Shamazel, Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated, where did that come from? Can you tell the audience? And she says, sure, I'd be happy to. Long story short, Gary Marshall, who is no longer with us anymore, Gary Marshall was the producer, writer of the show, and they were fighting, Penny Marshall and Gary Marshall, brother and sister, they were fighting on the set. They fought all the time. And one time, Penny said to her brother, oh, you're such a schlemiel, which is a Yiddish word for like idiot or stupid. And all of a sudden, Gary says, what was that? She goes, you're a schlemiel. He goes, you know, I've got a really good idea. And she's like, what are you talking about? He goes, you remember that thing you used to do as kids in Brooklyn where you used to hopscotch? She says, yeah. Can you teach Cindy how to do that? What do you mean, teach Cindy how to hopscotch? Why? He goes, don't worry about it. I've got an idea. All I want you to do is teach her what you used to do as a kid and come in tomorrow morning. I've got an idea. So she's like, okay, that's fine. So she goes to Cindy and says, Cindy, this is kind of a weird thing, but I have to teach you how to hopscotch like we did when I was a little kid. And Cindy's like, what are you talking about? She goes, I don't know. Gary's got a wild hair up his you-know-what, and he wants me to teach you how to do this. So, okay, fine. So they go outside, and they spend a couple of hours, and they're doing the hopscotching thing, right? They come back in to shoot the next day. Gary says to Penny, did you teach Cindy how to do that thing? And she's like, yeah, we practiced over and over and over. Why? What is the big deal about this? He goes, here's what I want you to do. I want you guys to hold hands. I want you to hopscotch, and I want you to say, Schlemiel Schlemazel, Haas Pfeffer Incorporated. They're looking at him like, what are you, nuts? Why? He goes, don't worry about it, just do it. The second take is the opening to the show. Now, you would never know that unless you interviewed someone who could tell you that. But that's the true story through Cindy Williams on how the Haas Pfeffer, well, Haas Pfeffer Incorporated was the name of the beer company in Wisconsin that they worked at. But the Shmuel Shamazel part was all done. That was the genius of Gary Marshall.
Yeah, that's amazing. And maybe the younger people don't remember that show, but we watched that show every week and never thought of a thing about it.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of inside information from this interview.
Well, I'll tell you, we may have to do this some more.
Sure. Hey, I'd be happy to do it once or twice a month with you. No problem.
No, this has been a lot of fun, and it's been great having you on. And we never really got into politics or anything like that. We touched on it a little bit, and it was just a lot of fun having you on. So, Josh, thank you so much for being on the American Vision. And
absolutely,
you got so many things.
If I could say one thing, folks, there's a lot of censorship out there. The things that I cover, the stories that I bring up, I'm a target, okay? And I do that because I want to see your future children, my 11-year-old, and many other children grow up in the America that I know and recognize. So please, if you can, go to Patreon, patreon.com/Josh, Josh, and Bernstein, Bernstein, all one word. Patreon.com/Josh Bernstein, and become a patron of my show. I'm known as kind of a political intellectual. But there's also a side of me that I like to cut loose a little bit. So there's going to be an uncensored version of the Josh Bernstein Show starting at only $5 a month, folks. That's not a lot of money to help out someone that's a truth seeker and a truth teller. You know, YouTube has completely demonetized my videos. Twitter has shadow banned me for over 3 years. Facebook, I think we know all about Facebook. So one of the only avenues that I can monetize my show is through patreon.com/Josh Bernstein. So please, if you can, go there and help me out. And also remember, I'm also streaming episodes on Amazon Television, Amazon Fire Stick TV, Roku Television, and syndicated all over everywhere else as well.
Yeah. And folks, I can tell you about Patreon. It's really easy to do because I did it last year, and if I can do it, you can do it.
And it's 100% safe. They've never had an issue or anything like that, and it does take 2 seconds. You click on Become a Patron, you pick the dollar amount, you put in an email address, you put in your credit card information one time, and you're done. You never get a bill, you never get paperwork, nothing. And what you'll be doing is you'll be helping someone like me continue to bring the truth out, continue to cover the stories that the rest of the media refuses to cover, and you'll help me grow, and as well as maybe even be able to do even more shows, which will bring double the truth to all of you.
And that's exactly what we want to do. And Josh, thank you for yourself and bringing the truth and the story behind the scenes. And it's just been great talking with you. Again, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, boys and girls, I'm back, and I hope you really enjoyed Josh and talking with him and getting to know him a little bit better, and getting to know what a little bit of his background and where he came from and how he got into this crazy business we're in of trying to spread the truth around against all odds, against everybody that's really against anything that has to do with America. So, and speaking of America, that's a word that's in the title of my book, 2020, A Clear Vision for America. And I'm also finishing up 2020, A Clear Vision for Our Future. And so we'll have another book, and in that book, you're going to hear my characters talk about the Constitution and our culture and our country. And I'm really excited about that. And I guess I'd better shut it down so I can get back to finishing up writing the book. And if any of you want to get the book, you can do that. And if you want to, you can go onto my webpage. And I still got a Kickstarter thing up there. I'm not really on Kickstarter anymore, but you can actually join in with me. And you can actually be an editor for the book, or you can be acknowledged in the book as a contributor at various levels. And you can even be a character in the book. I've got room to put a character in the book. I'm writing some extra characters in the book to tell the story of our country and our culture and our Constitution. It's something you could really be proud of, and something you could give the kids and grandkids. Because really, anything you do is all based on ordering the book, like a pre-sale of the book, so pre-purchase of the book. So, it's not like you're going to not get anything. You're going to get a lot, just like you got a lot from Josh. And I hope you watch his show and get on Patreon with him. He explained all that to you before, so really a good cause. So anyway, God bless you all. God bless our active duty personnel and our vets, and God save our America. We need you now more than ever before.